Hi everyone, my name's Julie Mary Carmel and I'm here talking about my chosen topic, which is the NDIS and educational funding. So, why did I choose this topic? Because I believe inclusion is a very important social issue. I also believe that good quality education needs good quality funding. And the area of disability and funding, especially when it comes to education, is one of the first areas that successive governments find ways to cut. People with disabilities, especially children, are some of the most marginalised and disadvantaged people in our society. There's a saying that says, the test of the morality of a society is what it does for its children. In this instance, we're talking about children with a disability. Did you know that 18.5% of Australia's population have a recognised disability? And this translates to 4.8 million of our population. Approximately 6% of our population, or 1.6 million, have a profound disability. And of this, 171,000 are children aged birth to 14 years old. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Persons with Disabilities states that people with a disability should be guaranteed the right to inclusive education at all levels, and that children with a disability should not be excluded from free and compulsory education. Australia signed this declaration on the 30th of March 2007 and it was ratified on the 17th of July 2008. So, what is the NDIS? The NDIS is a scheme of funding introduced by the Gillard government in 2012-13 in a response to a call from the Disability Agency and community for the introduction of a new mechanism for funding support for people with disability. So why the NDIS? The idea was to provide people with disabilities funding for reasonable and necessary supports required to help them achieve their lifelong goals and community participation. And the current funding system was flawed and was not meeting the needs of those for whom it was to benefit. The government saw a need to improve outcomes for people with disabilities, and a more fluid and transparent system was needed. And the costs to the government had blown out due to gross mismanagement by some agencies and government departments. And it also become part of the federal government's rhetoric that every Australian counts. A major aspect of the NDIS funding and education is that the new regulation states that the NDIS will not cover anything that is part of other government systems. And these are medical expenses and educational expenses. And that's what I want to talk about today. So, some of the key challenges of the NDIS and educational funding are the lack of flexibility in the funding, significant financial risk to service providers, such as schools and early intervention services, and profit-based services exploiting the system. Funding is not meeting the needs of those it is intended to benefit, and possible gaps between federal and state governments. So what does this translate to in reality? These gaps become most evident in the provision of early intervention, as the NDIS will not cover the costs of inclusion of children with a disability or developmental delay in educational settings. This remains the responsibility of the early childhood education and care departments and inclusion and professional support programs of each state government. In Victoria, funding is being cut annually, and the criteria to meet this funding is limited and is becoming stricter every day. So, reasons for change: to provide positive outcomes for children with disabilities in the hope that it will open up a range of possibilities and opportunities that are not previously available, by providing choice for children and their families, and leading to a whole life approach rather than a narrow here and now approach. So what has changed in delivery? Education services for children with disabilities has moved from a service-based delivery to an integrated family service model, where specialist educators undertake visits to the home and mainstream education settings rather than site-based delivery. Some of the advantages: families having more autonomy, families making informed decisions based on the needs of their child and not all other children, staff being able to develop more individualised plans based on the needs of that family and child, the potential to make the biggest positive impact for children with a disability and their access to quality education, because the approach to early intervention involves a more inclusive, integrated and family-centred model. And this leads to an increase in the number of children able to access disability services. Research has shown that when individuals, in this case children with under 18, their parents, have greater choice and control over their services, they're more likely to have better outcomes and to make more efficient and effective use of the funding. What are the disadvantages? When children do not receive funding through either the NDIS or state-funded services, there is a lack of qualified or trained staff to meet the needs of all children because of funding cuts to services. Exploitation, some families not using the funding for the purpose it was meant. An increased cost of equipment through business exploitation, seeing this as a way of making money. Service provision, increasing costs due to the one-to-one aspect of the service, and pressure on families to make up the shortfall in any money. And the reliance on existing and variable state and territory regulatory regimes that are not designed for the volume and demands of the NDIS. So, what are some of the challenges? Well, first, not enough funding being allocated to meet the needs of the child. Cuts in the number of hours funded for children. This thus does not provide an equitable situation for all children being given access to 15 hours funded preschool. In Victoria, the average funding is between 10 to 12 hours per week of funding. The targeted and individualised services could lead to removal of the inclusion mandate in early childhood settings, thus leading to the possibility of the reintroduction of segregated services for children with disabilities. So, in conclusion, the introduction of the NDIS in Australia is a scheme that is based on providing a decision-making system that has at the heart of it the principle of entitlement, not privilege. However, we could argue that it's only early days and only time will tell if the NDIS effectiveness is in providing better educational outcomes for all children with disabilities. And I want to finish up with one final thought. A child with special needs will inspire us to be special people. Thank you. And I've uploaded a copy of my PowerPoint for those who would like to look at it as well onto the LMS. Good luck everyone with your assignment and hope to catch you soon. Bye.